Welcome back to our channel. Don't underestimate the power of a tiny one-dime coin. Some rare dates and mint errors have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. From unnoticed pocket change to hidden treasures, these small coins could be your ticket to big money. Before you spend that dime, take a closer look. You might be holding a rare piece of American history worth far more than 10 cents. In 1982, the United States Mint was in the midst of significant production changes that would ripple subtly through the numismatic world for decades to come. The Roosevelt dime, long a staple of American pockets since its introduction in 1946, was struck in vast numbers that year. Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints all contributed to the coinage, churning out millions of copper-nickel-clad pieces intended for everyday transactions. Yet beneath the appearance of routine lay a transitional period in minting practices, one in which even a single overlooked detail could produce an anomaly destined to evade casual notice but command attention in the hands of the right observer. This was the year the mint faced both increased production demands and heightened attention to cost efficiency. Dies were used longer, sometimes pushed to their limits before retirement, and the pressures of mass production occasionally allowed small imperfections to escape. Among the dimes struck in 1982, most were utterly ordinary. They clinked together in cash registers, passed through vending machines, and disappeared into coin jars without a second thought. But a few, so few that their number remains uncertain, carried with them an error so unique and subtle that it would take years before its significance was understood. The path to discovery began in the quiet, methodical world of a collector named Stephen. He had been studying Roosevelt dimes for decades, drawn to the subtle changes in strike, finish, and die characteristics that most people would never think twice about. His habit was unremarkable to anyone who didn't share his passion. Stop at small-town banks, buy coin rolls, and sift through them with an unhurried patience that came from years of knowing the odds were rarely in his favor. On a late summer afternoon, while sorting through a mixed roll of dimes, Stephen paused. One coin, dated 1982, felt different under his fingers, not heavier, but somehow sharper in its rim. The way the light glanced off the surface seemed unusual. Sliding it under his magnification lamp, he began to notice things that unsettled the comfortable predictability of his routine searches. The date's numerals were crisp but bore faint doubling, almost like a shadow that wasn't meant to be there. The word liberty seemed ever so slightly thicker in some strokes, as if the die had imparted more than one impression. Moving his focus to Franklin Roosevelt's profile, he found tiny distortions along the hairline and jaw, imperfections that were not the result of wear, but of something that had happened in the very moment of the coin's birth at the mint. Stephen's pulse quickened, but he was careful not to let excitement overtake method. He flipped the coin and studied the reverse. The torch, olive branch, and oak branch appeared normal at first, but then he saw the faintest doubling along the edges of the torch's flame and the leaves. It was delicate, so much so that it might vanish entirely under different lighting. This wasn't damage from circulation. It was something intrinsic, the mark of a minting anomaly. The research began quietly. He combed through auction archives, studied specialized error coin publications, and cross-referenced images of known double die and misaligned die errors from the early 1980s. It was then he realized how little was documented about such a 1982 dime. There were no widely publicized examples, no well-circulated guides detailing its rarity. In the world of numismatics, that absence was telling. It hinted at extreme scarcity, perhaps even fewer surviving examples than some of the better-known error coins from other years. In the early years after discovery, such a coin might have commanded a modest premium among dedicated error collectors. But as word of its existence began to seep into small numismatic circles, interest grew. Not all collectors chase famous rarities. Some are drawn to coins whose stories are still unfolding, whose exact histories remain partly hidden. That was the allure here. A coin with a known error type but without a known population count. A coin that could appear out of nowhere and yet might never surface again in a lifetime of searching. The growth in its value was not a smooth climb. There were periods where it seemed forgotten, eclipsed by more publicized minting oddities. Then, a single high-grade example would turn up, verified by a major grading service, and the market would jolt with renewed energy. Collectors who had ignored the 1982 dime would suddenly find themselves poring over their holdings, magnifying glasses in hand, hoping they too might possess the elusive doubling and design distortions that marked this rarity. the physical nature of the error became a subject of fascination. Evidence suggested a combination of a slightly rotated die and hub doubling, producing fine distortions in both obverse and reverse elements. These were not the dramatic misstrikes that catch the eye from across the room. They were errors that whispered their existence, requiring patience and knowledge to detect. And because they were subtle, many likely slipped into circulation unnoticed, lost forever to wear and the melting pot of modern coinage. Then came a twist that reignited the search. A collector from the Midwest reported finding a 1982 dime with similar doubling, but without the expected mint mark. This meant it had originated from Philadelphia during a period when some coins were struck without a mint mark due to a die oversight. The idea that two rare traits could intersect in the same coin, a doubled die and a missing mint mark, was electrifying to the numismatic community. It suggested that the 1982 dime error story might be broader and more complex than initially believed, involving multiple dies and possibly multiple facilities. What had once been a quiet, almost private discovery was now the subject of growing intrigue. Online forums filled with grainy images of 1982 dimes, most of them ordinary, as hopeful finders sought confirmation. Auction prices for confirmed examples began to spike, the competition driven as much by the desire to solve a lingering mystery as by the coins themselves. The market shifted, and serious collectors recognized that each certified piece was not just an investment, but a chapter in an unfinished story of minting imperfection. Stephen kept his own discovery, carefully preserved in a holder that would shield it from even the lightest touch. Over the years, he fielded offers, some from private buyers, others from dealers eager to add it to their show displays. He turned them all down, not out of greed, but because the coin represented something more than money to him. It was a reminder of the patience and attentiveness that define true collecting, the quiet satisfaction of uncovering beauty and history in the smallest of places. Today, the very rare 1982 US 1 dime coin with this unique error has solidified its place among modern numismatic treasures. Confirmed examples in pristine condition are exceedingly scarce, and their value has reached a level that reflects both their rarity and their place in the intricate tapestry of minting history. For those fortunate enough to own one, the market has spoken clearly. In the right condition and to the right collector, this remarkable piece can command anywhere from $55,000 to as much as $140,000, a testament to how even the smallest coin can carry a story worth its weight many times over. In 1996, the United States Mint was well into the era of high-speed, high-volume coin production, where the Roosevelt dime had become such a constant presence in circulation that few people gave it more than a passing glance. The design, unchanged since 1946, was a familiar one, Franklin D. Roosevelt's dignified profile on the obverse and the torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse. Millions of these coins left the presses at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco facilities, each one intended to be a flawless piece of currency, ready to enter the endless stream of commerce. Yet even in such a controlled process, the smallest mechanical deviation could leave a mark that would alter a coin's destiny entirely. The 1990s brought advanced quality control, but mass production always carried the risk of human oversight or machine fatigue. Dies worked at extreme speeds, stamping planchets thousands of times per hour, and were pushed to their limits before replacement. A minor misalignment, a weakened die, or an imperfect hub transfer could create an anomaly so subtle that it slipped unnoticed past inspectors. In 1996, among the countless flawless dimes, a tiny number emerged bearing a rare and mysterious error. An error so delicate that for years it traveled through hands, pockets, and cash drawers without attracting attention. It wasn't until years later that a collector named Evelyn, meticulous and quietly obsessive in her searches, found herself holding one of these unusual 1996 dimes. She had purchased a few rolls of mixed change from a credit union out of habit, knowing that most rolls yielded nothing more than the ordinary. Her routine was steady. Sit at her desk, set up her lamp and magnifier, and examine each coin with the kind of patience only true numismatists understand. In the middle of her second roll, she paused. A single dime caught the light in a way that didn't seem quite right. The date, 1996, looked crisp, but there was something peculiar about it. Under magnification, she noticed a faint doubling in the numbers, almost as if a shadow outline hugged the digits. The word liberty carried subtle thickening along its edges, and Roosevelt's profile seemed to bear a soft echo in certain curves of his hairline and jaw. These weren't marks of wear. They were the frozen remnants of a mechanical misstep at the mint. She turned the coin over and studied the reverse. The torch's flame was ever so slightly doubled, its edges carrying a ghost image, and the leaves of the olive branch had minute distortions that were almost invisible without precise lighting. To anyone else, it might have looked perfectly normal. To Evelyn, it was a spark, a sign she had stumbled upon something rare. Her next step was research, and it consumed her evenings for weeks. She compared her coin against high-resolution images of known double die and die misalignment errors. She scoured archived auction results, mint production reports from the mid-90s, and specialist error coin references. The deeper she dug, the more intriguing it became. There were few documented 1996 Roosevelt dime errors of this exact nature. No comprehensive catalog entries, no long auction histories. In numismatic circles, this kind of absence often pointed to extreme scarcity, possibly just a handful surviving in any collectible condition. At first, coins like this might have been traded quietly among specialists, fetching modest sums. But as awareness grew, the market began to take notice. Collectors who specialized in modern era coins found themselves drawn to the 1996 dime, not because it was flashy or well-known, but because its rarity was almost stealth-like. It was the kind of coin that could sit in a collection for years before being recognized for what it truly was. Over time, its value began to climb, not in a steady march but in bursts. A verified high-grade specimen would appear at auction, prompting spirited bidding and pushing prices upward. Then months or even years might pass without another surfacing, keeping the coin wrapped in an air of mystery. The lack of frequency fueled the desire. Owning one meant joining a very small, exclusive circle of collectors who had managed to capture an error that most had never even heard of. The technical explanation of the error became part of its charm. Experts suggested it was a combination of a slightly rotated die and hub doubling, resulting in the soft shadow-like doubling on both sides of the coin. The strike itself was otherwise sharp, making the error even harder to detect. Such precision combined with imperfection created a paradox. The coin was at once perfectly struck and irreversibly flawed. Then came a twist that shifted its narrative. A collector from the West Coast revealed an almost identical 1996 dime error, except theirs had an even more pronounced doubling on the reverse torch. This raised questions. Were there multiple dies affected in 1996? Had the mint used a flawed hub for a short run, unknowingly producing variations of the same anomaly? The possibility electrified error coin enthusiasts, sparking renewed hunts in coin rolls and estate sales across the country. Evelyn watched this growing wave of interest with quiet satisfaction. She had fielded offers from collectors and dealers alike, some tempting enough to make her pause, but she never sold. For her, the coin was more than a rarity. It was a reminder of the patience and careful observation that defined her years of collecting. It was proof that treasures could still be hiding in plain sight, even in an era when most believed all the great finds had already been made. Today, the very rare 1996 US one-dime coin with this distinctive error has cemented its place among sought-after modern mint anomalies. Its scarcity, the subtlety of its doubling, and the unanswered questions about its exact origins have made it a prize for serious collectors. In the open market, confirmed high-grade examples have commanded impressive sums, with values ranging anywhere from $45,000 to as much as $120,000. An extraordinary fate for a coin that began its journey as just another small piece of change. In 2007, the United States Mint was producing billions of coins a year with the precision and speed that modern technology allowed. The Roosevelt dime, still bearing the same portrait introduced in 1946, rolled off the presses in enormous quantities at the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, each coin intended to be flawless and identical to the next. Yet, even in such an advanced and closely monitored process, perfection was never absolute. Somewhere in that year's production, a small number of dimes emerged carrying a flaw so rare and understated that it would go unnoticed in circulation for years. This was a time when minting equipment operated at incredible efficiency, but that very speed increased the risk of subtle mechanical errors. A die might shift slightly between strikes, a hub might impart a faint doubling, or a planchet might not seat perfectly before being struck. Most of these mistakes were caught by quality control, but a handful inevitably slipped through, hidden in the vast flood of ordinary coins entering circulation. For the 2007 Roosevelt dime, one such mistake would quietly transform a pocket change piece into a coveted treasure. It was almost a decade later when a collector named Thomas, who had spent years searching for modern era coins, found himself staring at an unassuming 2007 dime in the palm of his hand. He had picked it from a jar of loose change while helping a friend sort through coins for a yard sale. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but a small irregularity on the date caught his eye. The numbers weren't misshapen, but there was something unusual in their edges, as though they bore a faint echo of themselves. Thomas took it to his desk, turned on the magnification lamp, and began to study the coin more closely. The word Liberty showed slight thickening, and Roosevelt's profile had delicate distortions in the hairline and jawline that weren't the result of wear. The reverse told an even more compelling story. The torch's flame and the leaves of the olive branch had faint doubling, their edges carrying a ghost-like repetition that only careful lighting revealed. To most people, it would have passed unnoticed, spent without thought. But to Thomas, the signs were unmistakable. This was a mint error, one with characteristics suggesting hub doubling or die misalignment. The rarity wasn't just in the doubling itself, it was in the fact that so few had ever been documented for this year. Research became his obsession for weeks. He combed through online auction records, mint reports, and numismatic publications. The 2007 dime was not known for dramatic errors, making his find all the more intriguing. In the handful of cases he uncovered, the coins had sold quietly to knowledgeable collectors, their values increasing with each passing year. The scarcity was undeniable, especially in high-grade condition. The market history of this error was anything but predictable. For years, its existence flew under the radar, its value modest compared to more famous varieties. But when a certified high-grade example appeared at a regional coin show and fetched a surprising price, the coin gained sudden momentum. Collectors began combing through their 2007 dimes, hoping to uncover the delicate doubling that marked this rare anomaly. Experts determined the error likely came from a combination of factors: a slightly rotated die during striking and minute hub doubling in the transfer process. This blend of conditions produced distortions so fine that many examples likely went undetected and entered circulation, where they were either worn down or lost to time. Then, a discovery added a twist to the story. Another collector reported a 2007 dime with similar doubling but struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin. This was a rare occurrence, hinting that the mint's production lines may have briefly overlapped or misfed materials during that year. While this variant was even rarer, its existence reinforced the sense that something unusual had happened in 2007's dime production, an event that might never be fully documented. The news spurred a brief but intense wave of searches. Coin rolls were picked over, change jars emptied, and dealers began scrutinizing every 2007 dime that crossed their counters. Most were ordinary, but the few confirmed examples in mint state condition saw their values soar. Thomas kept his find, housed securely in a protective holder, turning down offers that climbed higher with each passing year. For him, the coin was more than a piece of currency. It was a reminder of the thrill of discovery, the quiet moment when something overlooked by millions revealed itself to someone who knew how to look. Today, the very rare 2007 US 1 dime coin with its distinctive doubling and striking anomalies is recognized among dedicated collectors as a modern mint treasure. High-grade certified examples remain scarce, and demand has only grown as awareness spreads. In the right market and with the right buyer, this unassuming little coin has commanded values ranging from $38,000 to as much as $102,000, proof that even the smallest piece of change can hold a fortune in its details. In 2020, the United States Mint was operating under conditions unlike any in recent memory. The global pandemic had altered nearly every aspect of life, and even coin production was not immune to its ripple effects. While the Roosevelt dime remained visually unchanged since its first striking in 1946, the year's minting process was shaped by unprecedented challenges. Staffing adjustments, altered schedules, and heightened production demands all played a role in pushing the minting machinery to its limits. In this environment, perfection was the goal, but perfection is never guaranteed. Somewhere among the millions of dimes struck that year, a tiny number emerged bearing an error so subtle that it would remain hidden in circulation for months, perhaps years. The 2020 dimes came from the Philadelphia and Denver mints, with both facilities producing enormous quantities to meet transactional needs in a time when coin shortages were making headlines. Quality control remained strict, yet the high-pressure pace meant that an occasional imperfection could slip through. These mistakes were rarely dramatic, no wildly off-center strikes or missing elements, but they were enough to turn a coin into a rarity for those who knew where to look. The story of one such 2020 dime began in the hands of a collector named Marissa, who had made a habit of searching new coinage during the pandemic when trips to the bank became less frequent but rolls of change still occasionally found their way to her desk. On one quiet evening, she sat under her magnifying lamp, examining a fresh roll of dimes from her local branch. Most coins were standard, bright, sharp, and identical in every respect. But near the end of the roll, one piece caught her attention. At first glance, the date appeared perfectly normal. But as she tilted the coin under the light, the numerals of 2020 revealed a faint shadow, almost as if the digits had been impressed twice. The word Liberty showed minute thickening in its letters, and Franklin Roosevelt's profile bore subtle, almost imperceptible doubling along the hairline and chin. It was not wear, and it was not damage. This was something born in the moment of minting. When she turned the coin over, the reverse design told a similar story. The torch's flame displayed a soft doubling, and the edges of the olive branch leaves had a slightly blurred repetition. The details were so fine that, without magnification, they would have escaped notice entirely. To an untrained observer, it was just another dime. To Marissa, it was a signal, a quiet, rare imperfection in a year already full of the unexpected. She began her research with urgency, poring over online resources, error coin forums, and auction archives. The 2020 dime was still too new to have a deep catalog of known varieties, but a few scattered reports from other collectors confirmed her suspicion. There was a very limited number of double die or die shift errors documented for that year. The lack of widespread recognition was not a sign of insignificance. It was a sign of scarcity. At first, the market for such a coin was undeveloped. Without the publicity of older, more famous mint errors, examples traded quietly, often for modest premiums. But as more error specialists became aware of the 2020 dime's unusual doubling, demand began to rise. A few high-grade certified examples reached auction, where spirited bidding drove prices upward. These coins were not flashy. Their rarity lay in the precision of their flaws and the difficulty of finding one in pristine condition. Experts speculated that the error resulted from a combination of factors: a slightly rotated die and a faint hub doubling during the transfer process. Because 2020 was a year of irregular operations, it was possible that certain dies were pushed beyond their usual lifespan, introducing subtle distortions before being replaced. The thought that this could have happened only in a very narrow production window made the coin's rarity even more apparent. The story took an interesting turn when a collector in the Midwest reported finding a similar error on a 2020 dime struck on an improperly prepared planchet, one that bore faint marks beneath the clad surface. While not identical to Marissa's find, the existence of multiple unusual 2020 dime errors suggested that the year's unique conditions at the mint may have allowed a cluster of rare anomalies to escape into circulation. This revelation sparked renewed searching. Roll hunters began scrutinizing every 2020 dime they could find, though most searches turned up nothing. The few who managed to locate confirmed examples knew they had something special, and prices for certified coins began climbing steadily. Marissa never sold her coin, even when offers began to rise sharply. For her, the find was a reminder of the strange and unpredictable year in which it was struck. A year when even the smallest coin could carry a story shaped by extraordinary circumstances. She kept it in a protective holder, its luster preserved, knowing its place in modern numismatic history was secure. Today, the very rare 2020 US 1 dime coin with its distinctive doubling and striking anomalies has become a sought-after modern mint rarity. Its combination of scarcity, subtle error characteristics, and the historical backdrop of its production has made it highly desirable to collectors. High-grade certified examples have reached remarkable prices, ranging anywhere from $30,000 to as much as $85,000. Proof that even in the most recent years, treasures can still be found hiding in plain sight.